Jane was a creature of routine and a staunch supporter of her local community. She wasn't just an American. She was a New Yorker, proud of her city's grit, its honesty, and its capacity to deliver the very best of global culture right to her doorstep. When she decided to visit Tandoori Nights, a popular Indian restaurant that had recently changed hands, she expected a clean, vibrant taste of authenticity, a celebration of the neighborhood's diverse palate. Instead, the moment she stepped inside, she was met with a jarring dissonance. The ambiance was an immediate, greasy slap of disorder. The air, once fragrant with cardamom and ginger, was now heavy and stale, thick with the smell of old grease and neglect. Staff members, mostly young, tired-looking men, darted past one another, their movements frantic, their faces etched with anxiety. The dining room, once cozy, now looked like a stage for chaos, tables sticky, floors unswept. It wasn't just poor management. It felt fundamentally broken. She was seated near the kitchen, a strategic mistake that gave her an unsettling view of the operation. She saw the manager, Mr. Patel, a man whose tailored suit seemed to clash violently with the grime of the establishment. He moved with a kind of quiet, predatory energy, snapping orders in a low, sharp tone that silenced any murmur of complaint from his employees. He didn't look like a restaurateur. He looked like a silent partner in a hostile takeover. The dinner was disappointing, the naan doughy, the curry bland. But the real disturbance came from the kitchen. She heard a young man's voice pleading in a mix of English and another language, and then Mr. Patel's cutting reply. "Your mother's medicine doesn't pay for itself, Rohan. Get back to the fryer. And if the inspector comes, you know nothing about the back rooms." The exchange was brief, but the raw anxiety in Rohan's voice, followed by the silent, immediate compliance, cemented Jane's unease. This wasn't just a failing business. This felt like an exploitative environment. Jane, unable to simply walk away, found herself driven by an ethical itch she couldn't scratch. The next day, she started digging. Her initial inquiries were innocent, a bad Yelp review, a call to the Department of Health. But the deeper she went, the harder the resistance. Her Yelp review was deleted almost instantly. Her complaint to the city's food safety line seemed to vanish into a bureaucratic black hole. This disproportionate resistance suggested something darker than bad hygiene. She staked out the restaurant. Not in the daytime when the chaos was visible, but late at night, she noticed the bizarre rhythm of the closing hour. At 2 a.m., long after the last legitimate patron had left, a heavy, unmarked black van would pull up to the rear service entrance. Mr. Patel would emerge, but he wouldn't be alone. He would meet a tall, silent man in a camel hair coat, a figure who clearly didn't belong to the food service industry. They never exchanged food deliveries. They exchanged suitcases, always heavy-looking, always in absolute silence. Jane's marketing mind, trained to track data and recognize patterns of deviation, went into high alert. The erratic staffing, the neglect of the core product, the food, and the high volume of cash-only transactions she had witnessed all pointed to a single, sinister conclusion. The restaurant wasn't running to make a profit from chicken tikka. It was running to wash money. The kitchen was a front, and the young, vulnerable workers were the captive, labor force enabling the scheme. The turning point came when Jane managed to speak, briefly with Rohan. She waited for him outside the restaurant during a late-night cigarette break. Approaching him with caution and genuine kindness, she told him she was concerned about the working conditions. Rohan was terrified. His eyes darted nervously, but her genuine sincerity chipped away at his fear. He revealed in hushed, desperate tones that he and the other employees were being paid less than minimum wage, sometimes nothing at all, the paychecks delayed by weeks. Mr. Patel held their visas, their documents, and threatened them with deportation and legal ruin if they spoke out. Rohan's family was sick back home, and Patel controlled the money he sent to them, keeping Rohan compliant through pure financial coercion. But Rohan dropped a crucial detail. The back room, ostensibly a storage closet, was used for meetings between Mr. Patel and the tall man. Rohan had overheard muffled arguments about the ledger and the offshore accounts. Jane realized she had to gain access to that back room. It was reckless, but the thought of Rohan's exploitation fueled her courage. Leveraging her professional background, she devised a plan. Posing as a fire inspector, complete with a rented high-visibility vest and a clipboard. She walked into Tandoori Nights during the chaotic dinner rush, demanding an immediate walkthrough of all storage facilities. The deception worked perfectly. Mr. Patel, momentarily flustered by the official presence and too proud to argue, reluctantly led her to the back. As he fumbled with the key, Jane saw it. Tucked deep beneath a stack of old tablecloths was a thick, leather-bound journal, the ledger. While Patel was distracted by a shouting match with a sous chef, Jane performed a military-grade snatch-and-grab, tucking the journal into the inner pocket of her vest. Back in her own apartment, the ledger confirmed her worst fears. It wasn't a standard accounting book. It was a cryptic record of large, irregular cash deposits under the guise of fake catering invoices. The names weren't local businesses. They were shell corporations, and the totals far exceeded any possible revenue from a restaurant, pointing to massive-scale money laundering. The tall man in the camel coat, she realized, was Mr. Patel's business partner, the operational head of a financial crime syndicate. Jane's discovery instantly transformed her from a concerned citizen into a target. The day after the ledger went missing, the threats began. It started with subtle, escalating moves designed to make her doubt her sanity. Her car tires were slashed not once but all four, a clear message of calculated violation. A brick was thrown through her kitchen window, wrapped in a handwritten note. "Stop looking, Jane. This is your last warning." Mr. Patel himself called her work number, his voice shifting from the smooth, professional cadence to a guttural, terrifying snarl. "You think you're a hero? You think your little notebook saves anyone? We know where your sister works. We know where your mother lives. Drop the book or you will regret the day you walked into Tandoori Nights." Jane immediately knew she couldn't stay. The threat to her family was the complication she couldn't ignore. She enacted an emergency protocol she'd only ever planned in theory, pulling her sister and mother out of the city under the guise of an urgent, mandatory family trip, leaving no traceable forwarding information. Jane herself went into hiding, checking into a dingy, cash-only motel on the far edge of the state, living out of a suitcase, the stolen ledger hidden in a false bottom. The isolation was brutal. Jane, used to the speed and efficiency of her life, now existed in a state of perpetual fear, checking the peephole every time a door slammed. The walls of the motel room felt thin, the silence deafening. She spent 3 agonizing days compiling and digitizing the evidence, knowing she couldn't trust the police yet, not until she had a clear, undeniable picture of the full syndicate, ensuring no one could intercept the report. During her hiding period, she was forced to confront the depth of her own courage. This was not a business negotiation. It was a fight for her life and the lives of those she loved. She realized that her initial disappointment with the greasy food was merely the thin, visible layer of a deeply corrupt operation. The exploitation of Rohan, the systemic theft, and the intimidation were the true menu. She finally contacted Detective Marcus Rayburn, a cold case investigator she knew from her corporate volunteer work with the city. She provided him with the digitized, encrypted file, the evidence of money laundering, tax evasion, and human exploitation, and demanded 2 things: anonymity and a guarantee that Rohan and the other workers would be granted legal protection and assistance. Detective Rayburn, faced with the overwhelming, meticulously organized evidence, moved decisively. The investigation was swift and brutal. Within 48 hours, the police and federal agents swarmed Tandoori Nights. They found the back room exactly as Rohan had described. Not a storage area, but a small, locked office containing additional falsified documents and a crude setup for counting and packaging cash. The restaurant was shut down instantly. Health and safety violations, combined with the federal warrant for money laundering, saw the windows boarded up, the sign removed, and the chaos finally extinguished. Mr. Patel, attempting a clumsy escape through the back alley, was arrested on multiple charges, including money laundering, racketeering, and intimidation. During his interrogation, he broke, revealing that his business partner, the man in the camel coat, was the head of an established international financial crime network that used failing small businesses across the East Coast to clean illicit cash. With Patel's confession and Jane's ledger, the authorities had the key to dismantling a major operation. The aftermath was a slow, complex process of healing. Rohan and the other immigrant workers, now freed from Patel's control, were immediately placed in protective custody. Jane, working through Detective Rayburn, ensured they received not only legal status but also financial aid and counseling, helping Rohan secure a new, legitimate job as a prep cook in a clean, ethical restaurant downtown. She had redeemed her initial moral debt. When the dust settled and the anonymity protection was lifted, the local news covered the story as a massive civic victory. Jane was hailed as a hero in her community. She wasn't celebrated as a proud American, taking on a specific ethnic establishment. She was lauded as an ethical citizen who risked everything to uphold the honesty and integrity of her neighborhood against corporate greed and financial crime. Jane slowly returned to her routine, but she was fundamentally changed. The quiet pride she once held for her city now included the pride of having fought for its soul. She had learned that evil often wears a mundane disguise, a dirty restaurant, a smooth-talking manager. Her vigilance was now permanent, her resolve unbreakable. Jane now knew that being a good citizen wasn't about filing a complaint. It was about standing the line against chaos, armed with nothing but courage and a stolen ledger. She had closed the chapter on Tandoori Nights, but her commitment to local justice was just beginning.